What is up everyone, it's Baldur here. The Portland Trailblazers, the only major American sports team located in Portland. A team with a great passionate fan base, referred at times as Blazer Mania. They even set a record for most sellout home crowds in a row. That streak ended in 1995 after 814 straight sellout crowds from 1977 to 1995. That's crazy. Through NBA history, the Trailblazers have had good competitive teams and managed to win one championship, but there have been missed opportunities to win more. Some might call it bad luck, others might call it a lack of good management. I choose to call the Blazers the unluckiest franchise in NBA history. The Blazers have a lot of what-ifs, and those what-ifs could have had huge effects on the NBA landscape back then. Let's take them out. We start off in 1976. The American Basketball Association, better known as the ABA, folds. Only 4 teams were taken into the NBA from the ABA, and those teams were the Pacers, the Nuggets, the Spurs, and the Nets. For the players on the other ABA teams, there was held a special ABA dispersal draft, where NBA teams drafted players from those ABA teams that didn't make the cut to the NBA. The Portland Trailblazers had 2 picks in the dispersal draft, the 2nd pick and the 5th pick. With the 2nd pick, they picked 24-year-old Maurice Lucas, and with the 5th pick, they selected the 21-year-old Moses Malone. But because of financial reasons, the Blazers had to choose between keeping Lucas or Malone. They chose to keep Lucas, who had a very good NBA career, but he wasn't Moses Malone, who ended up being a 3-time league MVP and a 12-time All-Star. Young Moses Malone could have been a backup to Bill Walton, but you can rightfully say that the Blazers didn't expect the things to happen that were about to happen to Bill Walton. But still, to let a young big guy like Malone go with all that talent, unbelievable. In 1977, without Malone, the Blazers make the playoffs for the first time in their 7-year history, and the first time with a winning record, led by new head coach Jack Ramsey, and with players like Bill Walton, who is considered one of the best centers of all time, and even by some, the best center ever, but I don't go that far myself. But he was pretty damn good. Along with him on the team were Maurice Lucas, Lionel Hollins, and many more. The Blazers went on to sweep the Lakers in the conference finals and make it to the 1977 NBA Finals, where they faced a star-studded team in the Philadelphia 76ers, led by Dr. J, along with Darryl, Dawkins, Doug Collins, and many more. The Blazers managed to come down from a 2-0 deficit and beat the 76ers in 4 games in a row to win the 1977 NBA Finals. This looked to be the start of something special. The Blazers were a force to be reckoned with. When people think about the youngest teams to reach the NBA Finals, the first thing that might come into mind of the younger NBA fans will be the 2011 Oklahoma City Thunder when they lost to the Miami Heat. That Thunder team's average age was 26.1 years old. That's impressive. But this 1977 Portland Trailblazers, their average age was 24.2 years old. And they won the title, unlike OKC. And it's not even close. The next 2 youngest teams to win the title were the 1956 Philadelphia Warriors, who were 25.6 years old, and the 1980 Lakers, where Magic Johnson was the finals MVP in his rookie season. They were 25.7 years old on average, compared to the Blazers 24.2 years old, who are the youngest NBA champions ever, and I don't think anyone is gonna get that record soon. This Blazers team was ahead of its time, so young and the future seemed so bright. They started off next season very well. The team was first in the standings with 50 wins and 10 losses. But at that point, the start of the downfall for the team happened. Bill Walton's foot problem started, and those foot problems would pretty much ruin the rest of his career. Bill's injuries, along with injuries to other Blazers players, ruined their chances. That era of players never made it out of the first round again. It got especially ugly with Bill Walton and the Blazers training staff. Bill Walton blamed the Blazers training staff for not taking better care of his injuries and threatened to sue them. He eventually left the Blazers in 1979. From 1978 to 1983, Bill Walton only managed to play in 47 games out of a possible 410. He played only in 11% of his games. Years ruined because of foot problems. What if that Blazers team stayed healthy? Their peak could have been from around 1978 to 1984, just by their young age. Out of those 6 years, the Sonics and the Rockets made it both to the finals once, while the Magic Johnson-led Lakers made it 4 times. And after the '84 finals, the Lakers would make it to the finals 5 out of the next 7 years. Those Portland teams could have given the Lakers some serious run for the money. Who knows? A team that young to win a title, they would grow together, get more experience. The Lakers might have had 1 or 2 less NBA titles, and the Blazers 1 or 2 more. Not to mention if they had kept Moses Malone at the first place. He could have been a great cornerstone for the franchise with all the injuries to Walton. He could have carried the team into the '80s. But we will never know what could have happened. Now to the next what if. Fast forward to the summer of 1984. The Blazers finished the season 10 games above 500. Going into that summer's draft, the Blazers had acquired the 2nd overall pick from a previous trade they did with Indiana. In the draft, the Blazers had the 2nd pick. They needed a big man for the future. So they decided to go with the 7'1" Sam Bowie, instead of a guy called Michael Jordan. Now people often say that the reason they didn't pick Jordan was because they already had Clyde Drexler at shooting guard. But Clyde was Portland's draft pick from the year before, and he wasn't even drafted that high in his draft either. He was picked 14th overall. In Drexler's rookie season, he wasn't even a starter. He averaged 7 points in 17 minutes. He wasn't Clyde the Glide Drexler at that point. So the Blazers could have gone ahead and picked for talent over need and had Jordan instead of Bowie. But of course, at that time in the NBA, you had to have the big guy. You always draft the big guy over a small guy. So they took Sam Bowie over Michael Jordan. And man, did that haunt the Blazers or what. Jordan is of course recognized as the greatest player in NBA history, with 6 championships. When he arrived to the Bulls in 1984, the Bulls had finished the previous season 28-54, while the Blazers finished the season before 46-36. So the Blazers were clearly a better team. So it makes you wonder if Jordan would have won titles even earlier if he had gone to the Blazers, and if he and Clyde Drexler could have played together. If not, then simply trade Drexler somewhere else. Because as I said before, Clyde Drexler wasn't the sure thing, but Jordan showed it from the start by averaging 28 points in his first season for the Bulls. Now granted, the Bulls didn't have a lot, but we are talking about Michael freaking Jordan. In Sam Bowie's rookie season, he managed to average 10 points and 8 rebounds. Bowie was never an impact player in his career, a career that was hit by injuries. He played for 3 teams over 10 years, where he only managed to play 56% of his career games, with career averages of 10 points and 7 rebounds, while Jordan, on the other hand, averaged 30 points over his NBA career, and became the most famous athlete in the world at that time. Now, let's move forward to 1990. The Portland Trailblazers had built a great team, led by Clyde Drexler, Terry Porter, Jerome Kersey, Buck Williams, and Kevin Duckworth. They made it to the finals twice, first in 1990, where they lost to the bad boy Detroit Pistons in 5 games. Then 2 years later in 1992, where they lost to a guy that they didn't draft 8 years earlier, Michael Jordan, in 6 games. The Blazers weren't able to get over the hump. Something might have been missing. Something big. Literally. With that, we wind it back to the 1986 NBA draft.
For the last pick of the first round of the NBA draft, America's game, the Portland Trailblazers select Arvydas Sabonis of the Soviet Union.
Oh, well, now that's going to be an interesting selection.
Good night, nurse.
Ridiculous. Just ridiculous.
Well, I can't spell it. I can't pronounce it.
In 1986, people weren't thrilled about drafting a player from the Soviet Union, whose name they could barely pronounce. And of course, at that time, the Cold War was going on between the East and the West, where the United States and the Soviet Union were at the forefront. Because of the Cold War, the 7'4" Arvydas Sabonis was not allowed to play in the NBA. This guy wasn't just some European, this guy was a bona fide stud. He was on the 1988 Soviet Union Olympic team that beat the United States team, which eventually led to the US allowing NBA players to go to the Olympics. Basically, the reason why we saw the Dream Team in '92. Sabonis didn't come to the NBA until 1995, so those Blazers teams never got a chance to having him earlier when they drafted him. And at the time they got him, he was 31. And by that time, he had lost most of his mobility because of injuries. He tore his Achilles in the late 80s, was rushed back way too soon by the Soviet Union, which eventually led him to have a ton of more injuries and setbacks. Setbacks to his Achilles, knees, and groin. In fact, his injuries were so bad that he actually got shorter. He was 7'3" in his 30s, instead of 7'4" in his early 20s. In the 80s, before the injuries, this guy was seriously athletic, to go along with being super skilled. He might have been the most skilled center ever. Like really, his passing ability and IQ was on par with Larry Bird's. He was a good 3-point shooter and ran like the wind. If he had been in the NBA, he would be on par with David Robinson and Hakeem Olajuwon, for sure. Here's how some people around the NBA talked about Sabonis.
Arvydas was Dirk Nowitzki, only 7'4", okay? He shot threes, passed the ball like Larry or Magic.
You know, I played against Sabonis basically since I was 16. I told everyone all the time that if Sabonis was in the NBA, he'd be the best player possibly ever. And guys always say, come on. I said he'd be the best center in the league by far.
Sabonis again! Brilliant!
I played against Sabonis in his heyday.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something, he was one of the 5 best players in the world.
Guy could pass.
You know, he got to the NBA, had blew out both Achilles, gained 100 pounds, and still made the All-Star team.
And you know what?
Like when he got to the NBA, he wasn't the same guy. When he
that's unconfirmed.
Yeah.
It's confirmed by me.
Baby Sabonis.
His body was beaten up. Yet in his first NBA year, he had a PER of 25 in 24 minutes of play. What if he played on those early 90s Blazer teams? A lineup with Porter, Drexler, Sabonis, Kersey, and Williams. No disrespect to Duckworth, but he's no Sabonis. This team would have been scary. As I said before, they made it to the finals in 90 and 92. In 91, they lost to the Lakers in the conference finals in 6 games. I think they would have beaten the Lakers that year with a healthy Sabonis. So I would say they would have made 3 straight finals. It would have been very interesting to see if they had gotten a title in one of those finals. I'm not sure if they would have gotten the title in 90 versus the Pistons. I think it's more likely they would have stolen one from the Bulls. But unfortunately, the collapse of the Soviet Union didn't happen until the end of 91, and Sabonis was playing in Spain. He decided to finish off his contract there. The Trailblazers haven't made the finals ever since 92. Back to the timeline. We move to the year 2000. Game 7, Western Conference Finals. Heading into the fourth quarter, 16 points ahead of the Lakers. The famous comeback from the Lakers. Brian Shaw hits a few threes for the Lakers and it's all tied up. Then the famous alley-oop from Kobe to Shaq to top things off. The Lakers went on to win in one of the greatest comebacks in NBA history. What if that never happened? There's a big likelihood that those Laker teams would have been split up. This would have been the 4th year without them making the finals. But for one of the biggest collapses in NBA history, they made it to the finals instead of Portland. That 2000 Portland Trailblazers team was loaded. At center was the 35-year-old Sabonis. At power forward was Rasheed Wallace with Brian Grant and a young Jermaine O'Neal behind him. Small forward was Scottie Pippen, Detlef Schrempf and Bonzi Wells. At shooting guard was Steve Smith and then Damon Stoudemire at point guard. That's a great team. And if the Lakers would have split, there's no reason not to think those Blazer teams could have won a title or two, because the Western Conference was stronger than the Eastern Conference at that time. But if they had finished that Laker game in 2000, I'm pretty sure they would have beaten the Pacers in the finals, or at least the Nets a year later. But we will never know. Those Portland teams were never the same, as the team declined into the 2000s. We go to 2007. The Blazers were coming off a season where their draft pick from the year before, Brandon Roy, earned Rookie of the Year honors after a great rookie season. We head into the 2007 draft lottery, where the Portland Trailblazers have only 5.3% chance of getting the number 1 pick. the draft was considered to have two players who were destined to become NBA superstars in Greg Oden and Kevin Durant. Despite only a 5.3% chance, the Blazers end up with the number 1 pick. The Blazers took Greg Oden with the first pick. In a survey amongst NBA people, more than 2/3 of them said they would pick Oden ahead of Durant. Prior to the draft, Greg Oden was looked at as a once-in-a-generation center. 7 feet, 270 pounds and freakishly athletic. Defense was his biggest strength, where he got comparisons to Bill Russell and David Robinson.
The best center prospect since Patrick Ewing is Greg Oden, a guy who's got tremendous upside. He's a special player, and he's absolutely a winner. Since he entered high school, he has not suffered a home loss, and he's just scratching the surface of his potential. He's athletic, he's got great hands, and he's using both of them now. He's an emerging offensive force. I think he's a no-brainer first pick.
Greg Oden was supposed to be the next great big man. And as the NBA had always been, you take the big guy over the small guy. So the Blazers took the next great center over the big scorer from college, in Durant. Unfortunately, Greg Oden couldn't play in his rookie season. He had to have microfracture surgery on his knee. That was just a fraction of what was to come. In his second year, he was able to finish off the season, playing 61 games. Third season, his season was cut short after only 21 games. That time, in 2009, would be the last time he stepped on a court in a Trailblazers jersey. Next time he played an NBA game was 5 years later in 2014. Greg just got injury after injury after injury, while Durant has become an MVP and one of the top players in the NBA. I have a hard time saying Greg Oden was a bust. The guy just never caught a break. So many injuries. It's sad that we didn't see his potential. Now, of course, similar things happened to Brandon Roy. His career ended because of knee issues. Way too early, only 26 years old. He tried a comeback a year later with the Timberwolves, but his knees only allowed him to play 5 games. His knee cartilage was so bad. Now what if they picked Durant over Oden? I'm not sure if Durant makes the finals with Portland, because Roy would eventually quit because of knee cartilage issues. And I'm not sure if Aldridge is enough to get past the Mavs, the Spurs and the Warriors. Durant may have left like Aldridge did in 2015. It's not impossible. What if Greg Oden and Brandon Roy had been healthy and stayed together? Oden, Roy and LaMarcus Aldridge as a big three. And keep in mind, Aldridge would have most likely been the third wheel. Oden and Aldridge fit perfectly together. Oden inside and Aldridge outside. And then there was Brandon Roy, who was a top 3 shooting guard in the league along with Kobe and Wade. That team would have been amazing. You wouldn't have been able to go small against that team. The combination of Oden and Aldridge would overpower and out-rebound smaller teams. So if healthy, Oden in my opinion would have been a better fit than Durant. This Portland team could have been a contender from 2010 until today. And who knows, maybe they would have won a title or two. It's possible. Even without Oden, the Blazers were a playoff team. And this wasn't the only draft choice that backfired during that time. In 2005, they traded down in the draft to get Martell Webster, instead of players like Deron Williams and Chris Paul, who went on to become 2 of the best point guards in the NBA. In the time since the Roy and Oden years, the team went to the lottery, striking gold in 2012 when they drafted Damian Lillard with the 6th pick. But 3 years later, Aldridge and 4 other rotation players left. Still, the Blazers have had great success this year despite the odds against them. It's amazing what this one franchise has had to go through. All the injuries, what if they drafted Michael Jordan or Kevin Durant? What if Sabonis had been allowed to come over to America? What if they kept Moses Malone in 1976? And what if they had finished off the Lakers in 2000s? So many questions. You could say out of all these scenarios combined, the Blazers could have had 6 or more titles. Which technically couldn't have happened because, let's say Bill Walton never gets injured and the Blazers keep on winning into the 80s, then it's likely they will never be in contention to get Jordan in the draft. Now, on the topic of Jordan and Durant, you never know how their careers may have developed in Portland. Would they have gotten the right players around them, etc.? I could go a lot deeper into each of these what ifs, but I couldn't in this video because it would just be way too long. There's a good chance I'll do that sometime later though, on some of these topics. So this is why, in my opinion, the Portland Trailblazers are the unluckiest franchise in NBA history. Hopefully there are better days ahead for the great fans in Portland who have had to suffer enough. That's it. Are the Blazers the unluckiest franchise in NBA history? Out of all of these what ifs, was there anything that surprised you, and what was the biggest what if? Put it in the comments below. Other than that, this has been your boy Baldur. Like, subscribe, and peace.